Welcome to the Press Box Podcast. Hi, I'm your co-host, Ralph Miranda. My other co-host, Joseph Miranda, will be joining us shortly, and we're glad to be back here on the Press Box Podcast. We've had a little bit of a break since our last visit with Philip Uline a few months ago, but a lot of sports have gone on since we've been on the air, and we're going to talk today a little bit about the NBA, all the free agent signings and free agent movement, and the way that league has changed over the years. We're also going to talk about baseball. We just had the All-Star game in Major League Baseball. We're going to talk a little bit about the way that game has changed, some of the current controversy about the balls being juiced. You heard Justin Verlander come out and mention that, and the commissioner of baseball has had to refute that. But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about baseball in general. We'll talk about hitting, and we're going to talk a little bit about golf. We're getting close to the end of the golf season, the British Open coming up, and we're going to talk about that and about Tiger Woods and his winning the Masters a few months ago. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We'll have another one for you here in a few days, and hopefully we'll get on a more regular schedule, and we hope you enjoy this episode of the Press Box Podcast.
Welcome back to the Press Box Podcast. Like we said in the intro, we're going to start talking a little bit of NBA here. It seems like, kind of like the NFL, the NBA has turned into a year-round sport just about. And some would argue that this is one of the more exciting times for the NBA because it seems like the whole league just switched around teams almost. A lot of guys were free agents this summer. And June 30th, Sunday night was the first... I think it was 6 p.m. Eastern, first time guys could officially sign the new teams, although they were obviously been talking to the teams before that. But let's start at the top with the biggest name that actually just landed here recently was Kawhi Leonard going to the Clippers. So we'll start with that and get your reaction.
Yeah, I think a couple things. You mentioned we're talking about NBA here in July, which is really pretty interesting. I think I heard one of the other sports commentators say, when's the last time we were talking about NBA in July? So the NBA has kind of achieved what they really wanted, and that's to become a year-round sport. We talked about the fact that from the difference in time from the NBA Finals to when camps open seems like it's about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kawhi Leonard was kind of the biggest name to come out of this year's free agency. And he decided to leave the world champion Toronto Raptors to go to the Clippers, which was really an interesting move because everybody thought he was going to be going to Los Angeles, but they also thought that he would be going there to join the Lakers. And what made it even more interesting was that he delayed his announcement because behind the scenes, he was trying to get his friend Paul George to go with him to the Clippers. So that made it even more interesting. But you made the point about all these guys changing teams, and it really has become, in my view, kind of ridiculous because it seems like every year the landscape changes almost 100% because all you got to do is take two guys from a team and move them to some other team, and you've pretty much shifted the balance of power right there.
Yeah. And talked about Kawhi Leonard being the biggest name. Obviously, Durant was a free agent as well, and he's arguably as big or bigger name, but he won't be playing this season really at all. So the Leonard move there is going to be the most immediate in terms of big names. But yeah, you talked about the turnover in the league, and these are the biggest stars in the league. Imagine in the NFL if quarterbacks change teams every few years, how strange that would be. It's the same type of thing, but it feels like now just everybody's become used to it. Whereas even 10, 11 years ago, this didn't happen in the NBA as much,
Yeah.
You had guys that, came up and stayed with their team for the most part.
Well, I think the thing that makes it so interesting, we talked a little bit about this together today, is that, you see these guys in the NBA demanding trades. That's a whole other issue, but they'll demand trades. And I think the problem is the NBA has become a league where the inmates are running the asylum, okay? The players are running and dictating what's going to happen. I mean, it's just amazing to me that, can you imagine if you had NFL players demanding trades? I mean, it just wouldn't happen. Even baseball, it doesn't happen. Another thing that's so amazing to me is, we talked about Kawhi Leonard and Kevin Durant both left somewhere like $50 million on the table because the way the contracts are structured, they both could have got max deals had they re-signed with their current teams. So Leonard took $50 million less, Durant the same thing, and Durant's was even more peculiar because he knew he wasn't going to be playing this coming season. He could have exercised his option with Golden State, made more money, and then left after next season. Yeah. So that's another interesting thing is, are these guys that wealthy where $50 million doesn't make a lot of sense to them? So again, you brings up the question of, these contracts are guaranteed, so the money doesn't mean anything to them. In the NFL, if somebody signs a $125 million contract, only the signing bonus is guaranteed. So it's really it's become an interesting sport, the NBA. And now the commissioner comes out and says he's upset with the fact that there's tampering and with the fact that there's guys demanding trades when basically, he caused a lot of that because they've allowed these players to kind of dictate the terms of the agreements.
Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, I don't know how these smaller market teams can win because we'll use the New Orleans Pelicans as an example.
Right.
It's not a free agent destination.
Right.
And we talked about some teams, Sacramento,
Detroit.
Yeah, those places. But the best you can hope for is to win the lottery and get an Anthony Davis like New Orleans had.
Right.
Okay, so you get him on his rookie contract, which I think is 2 years.
Right.
And then they're just coming into the league. They usually re-sign the next deal.
Right.
So I think it's another 3 or 4 years.
Right.
And if your guy becomes a superstar, he's going to want out if it's a small market like Davis did.
Right.
So it's just a big cycle, right? That's what's going to happen with Zion Williamson if he becomes a star, right? You're going to be hearing 5 or 6 years, he's going to LA, going to New York.
Right.
So it's almost like if you're one of these teams, you have to compete for a championship within the first 5 years of the guys you drafted like that,
Right.
And otherwise they're just going to want to leave for the most part.
Right.
Well,
help me out here. You know a little more about the NBA than I do. There's not a hard salary cap in the NBA?
No, because there's a luxury tax.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as much as I'm not a big proponent of a salary cap, I think that's what makes the NFL so exciting. Is the fact that each team has a certain amount of money to spend. Yeah. Okay. So, you can have maneuvering in free agency. All right. But you can't make wholesale changes in free agency. Now, also, football has the most players participating of any sport in a given game. So that's another factor. But my point is, in the NFL, there's parity. In other words, you can be Cleveland Browns is not a good example, but you could be the New York Giants, for example, who were, what were they, 4-12 last year or 5-11, whatever it was. Theoretically, they could be 9-7 next year and make the playoffs, okay? Because of the fact that, they can make a few moves here and there within the salary cap. Other teams may lose some key guys. And that's what makes the sport so popular. Now, I don't know how popular the NBA is from a rating standpoint, but it's hard for me to believe that your fans are that excited if your team never has a chance to win, or that the quarterback you've got or the point guard you've got using a different sport is going to be gone after 2 or 3 years. So I don't know if it's a viable model that can sustain the future.
Yeah. Going away from free agency as a whole for a second, let's talk about the Knicks real quick here, because that's a team that had big aspirations going into free agency, and I think the biggest name they ended up with was Julius Randle on a 3-year deal.
They were the biggest loser of the whole thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, you're hearing a lot of stuff about Durant and Kyrie going there. They ended up going to Brooklyn. Kawhi Leonard didn't even meet with them. And now you hear stuff about, they're going to wait for Giannis Antetokounmpo from Milwaukee in 2 years.
It's ridiculous.
It's just, again, that cycle's repeating itself. What's the deal with New York? Why do you think that nobody wants to go there? You hear a lot of stuff about the owner. You hear a lot of stuff about, I guess, the way the team's run. But if you're set on leaving your current destination, I think it's a win-win to go to New York, right? I mean,
I would think so. I mean, we talked about that. I mean, where else? If you were a guy chasing a championship, if you wanted to be the man, okay, if you went to New York and brought the Knicks a championship, you would be kind of like Kawhi Leonard is in Toronto, right? I mean, you would be the man.
Yeah.
So, the owner is the thing I keep hearing, that nobody likes the owner and nobody likes the way the organization is run. But I think if you were a free agent of the caliber of a KD or a Kawhi or a LeBron, you could pretty much dictate how that organization is going to be run before you went there, right? So, I don't know really what it is, why the Knicks have become sort of a anathema, why these players just really don't like to go to New York. And if you're a Knicks fan, you got to be in the dumps. I mean, what was it, 3 months ago, you went from the possibility of, one, having the overall number one pick, right, because you had the worst record in the league, and two, signing at least one max free agent, maybe two, okay? And now not only did you not get the first pick, but you lost out on all these free agents.
You traded Porzingis to the Mavericks.
And they traded Porzingis to the Mavericks. So you're looking at a team next year. They won, 14 games last year? The Knicks, you'd be lucky to see them win 25 this coming year,
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you're going to hear people say, they should quote unquote tank again or whatever. But it didn't do them any good this year.
It didn't work.
Am I right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
You're almost better just trying to win games and seeing where the chips fall.
I agree with you 100%. And I don't know. That's a really good question because you would think that New York has the kind of draw that an LA would have. Maybe not from a living standpoint or a weather standpoint, but the market. I mean, it's the biggest market in the country. So.
Yeah, and so you mentioned parity, which I think we're going to get some of that this year in the NBA because the Warriors are no longer the Warriors as we know them. I mean, Durant's gone. Klay Thompson's going to be out most of the season.
Right.
He probably most likely be back towards the end, maybe definitely for the playoffs, but they're not the clear-cut favorites like they have been the last few years.
No.
You've got them out west. You've got the Clippers. The Lakers will be in the mix, I'm sure, with Davis now. You got Nuggets, who were, I think, the 2 seed last year.
Mm-hmm.
Jazz, Blazers, Mavericks, Rockets. They're all gonna. I mean, I don't know if I named 8 teams or more, but there's only 8 playoff spots.
That's right.
So it's going to be pretty highly contested there. And in the East, you've got Milwaukee. Philadelphia is going to be a favorite.
Right.
Depending on what Miami does here, I think they're already probably a playoff team, but they could be a little more dangerous if they get like a Westbrook or somebody like that.
Right.
So it's kind of anybody's title here,
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I think this is the first year probably in 5 or 6 now that we've had, pretty much an open competition for the title. But still, I mean, you've got what, 30, is it 31 teams in the NBA?
30.
All right, 30 teams in the NBA. So you still got 14 teams that aren't going to make the playoffs. And there's a clear disparity between the top, say, 10 to 12 and the rest of them. I mean, you can tell a distinct disparity between them. So I don't know that there's parity so much as there is maybe parity is not the right word. Maybe there's more uncertainty this year of who's going to be the champion. Who's going to be the team that comes through, and more so in the West than the East. I think in the East you got Milwaukee, you got the 76ers, maybe the Celtics.
I forgot about them.
Yeah, I doubt it, but maybe the Celtics will be up there. But I think from a standpoint of who has a really good chance to win it, I think it's between Milwaukee and Philadelphia this year, as far as the finals. But the West, it's completely up for grabs. Yeah. I mean, there's no question.
Right. So, we'll see what happens there. Like you said, training camp's just around the corner.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
I mean, if you're a team that gets to the finals, you have what? Maybe, was it 3 months, barely?
That's about right.
Yes. I mean, as opposed to the NFL, if you get to the Super Bowl, you've still got
6 months, 6 to
7 months.
Yeah.
Right? So, I guess at some level it makes sense. It's not as physically taxing, but
I guess the only difference is in the NBA, in the NFL, you've got 6 months, but you've got off-season activities and all that stuff. Whereas the NBA, you really don't have that, right? You just start right out. So, but yeah, it is right around the corner, and should be interesting to see what happens.
So let's change it up and talk about baseball a little bit here. We just had the All-Star game last night at the time we're recording this. The Home Run Derby the night before that.
Right.
And baseball, the baseball All-Star game is the best All-Star game of any sport.
No question.
Clearly. It's in the middle of the season, unlike football. The players try the whole game, unlike basketball.
True.
So it's just a great event. A couple of things you heard out of this year's All-Star game is, and really all seasons, one is about the baseballs. I think it was Verlander who said the balls were quote unquote juiced.
Right.
Whatever he meant by that. Look, I think the Major League ball is wound much tighter than. It's a different ball than the minor league ball, okay? So that's a fact. But did they wind it even a little tighter the last couple of years? Maybe. I don't know. They're never going to admit that, but they might have. I don't know. But there is a difference. The ball flies much farther than a minor league ball. So I don't know. What are your overall thoughts on that whole deal?
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, I agree with what you just said. I really believe. Well, let's step back. I mean, there's statistics that show that more home runs are going to be hit this year than any other year. Yeah. All right. More home runs at this point at the All-Star break. I think I saw a statistic that 100 home runs have been hit 450 feet or more. Last year, there was only 82 total. Okay. So the ball is traveling farther. Yeah. Now, you could argue that that's the ball. You could argue that it's the player. You could argue that, players now are swinging. Their launch angle is such that they're trying to elevate the ball. You could argue all that, but obviously, I think the ball is wound tighter than it's been, and it's wound that way because they want offense. I mean, we've talked about this in the NFL. Why are all these rules changed in the NFL to limit the defense? Because they want offense. Yeah. Because the average fan doesn't appreciate defense. The average fan wants to see scoring, okay? They don't want to go to a baseball game that's 2-1, right? They want to go to a baseball game that's 13-7, all right? Because there's so much action. Now, part of what Verlander said, I think, is a little sour grapes. I mean, I think I saw where he's given up more home runs this year than he's ever given up, okay? So that's part of his little contention there. But yeah, the ball is juiced, and I think Major League Baseball knows it. They can argue all they want that they don't know it, but they've got their hands in the pie. They know what's being manufactured. It's not like they're just accepting a shipment of balls and saying, "Oh, thank you," So yeah, that's part of it. But I think it's also the game has changed. I mean, 30, 40 years ago, if you'd have told somebody, we heard this today, and I could vouch for it because I lived there in that era. But if you'd have told somebody, strikeouts aren't going to matter. It doesn't matter if you strike out, 100 times. You don't have to bunt. We're not going to try to move guys over. Don't worry about getting a single. That's ridiculous. But that's what the game has become. I mean, that's basically what it's become.
Yeah, I mean, it's the perfect storm for home runs as compared to the time period you're talking about. The ballparks are smaller,
right?
And you can look at a number of ballparks that are newer that have moved the fences in from when they opened. All right, you got Seattle's done it, the Mets have done it, San Diego's done it, Detroit's done it, and I could probably name some more if I thought about it. But those newer stadiums that have moved fences in from even when it was built, okay, you got the balls like we just talked about,
right?
The strikeouts, it's boom or bust. You don't care if the guys don't care if they strike out,
right?
And you got the players who are at an all-time level of physical prowess, right? They're bigger, they're stronger, they're training harder, as opposed to what they're doing years ago. So when you combine all that, and the pitcher's velocity too, I mean, every bullpen's got guys that can throw 97, 98, 100.
Right.
So if you get a ball coming in there 99, guy's launch angle swing on a strong guy's launch angle swing on a ball like that, it's going to go.
Right. So
it's kind of, you're looking at the perfect storm, like we said. Now, the reason that the Major League ball has always been different is the seams are tighter, so the pitchers can't do as much with it, right?
Right.
So,
right.
Again, I guess it's an offensive rule, but like we were saying, there's probably just a little bit harder this year, a little bit tighter.
Well, and I think
or in the past couple of years,
right. I think it is, but I think baseball is its own worst enemy. I mean, I think it's kind of the chicken and the egg argument, right? I mean, you look at the last 3 or 4 years, the shift has become the big thing in baseball, right? In other words, they're shifting now, and they're putting that second baseman out into short right field to take away the pull for the left-hander and so forth. Same with the right-hander. Okay, so guys aren't able to get doubles and singles anymore. Yeah. So it's evolved. The only way they can get the ball out there is they got to lift it, right? So baseball has caused some of this by the shift. I mean, I told you I saw a game here a few days ago where a team had 4 outfielders, and their second baseman was in that short right field area, and the shortstop was in kind of the short left field area. They only had one guy actually standing in the infield. So, so now, to me, the players, hitters have to adjust to that, and they're not willing to do that. I mean, if I was a hitter and I saw that, I'd be taking a half swing and getting a single every time, and I'd go 4 for 4 every day. I may not have a home run, but my average is going to be pretty good. Yeah. But that's not what they want, And somebody else made the point, which I thought was interesting, that you don't really see base runners anymore. Because it's either home run or bust. You might get a walk here and there, and then somebody hits a home run.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it's become a weird game. Yeah. It really has.
I think I heard too that 27 outs last night for the American League. I think it was 16 were strikeouts.
16 were strikeouts. Yeah.
So
yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I mean, that's what the game has become. You don't see the Tony Gwynns of the world anymore. You don't see guys that are hitting 340, with 6 home runs. I mean, it's just not happening anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah, and I don't think you got guys. I don't know. I'm not looking at any stats, but approaching 100 strikeouts at the All-Star break, Tony Gwynn probably never struck out 100 times in the season.
Exactly. I mean,
probably not even close.
When I was playing baseball in high school, which was a long time ago, if you struck out even once a game, you felt horrible. Yeah. I mean, that was something that you wanted to avoid at all costs, was striking out. Today, it doesn't matter. I mean, guys strike out 3-4 times a game, and then they'll hit a home run. I mean, so. I don't know, but let's talk a little bit though about just here. We're at the All-Star break. We've talked about some of the political issues, if you will, but let's talk about the races themselves. I mean, we've got we've got a few interesting races going on. We've got the National League Central Division is a pretty interesting race. I mean, we've got 5 teams in that division, all within about 4.5 games of each other, which is pretty fascinating when you think about it. I think we saw today that the Reds were in last place, but only 4.5 games out of first, yet they're also 4.5 games out of the wild card. The Dodgers are running away with the National League West. Yeah. At this point, the Yankees are running away with the American League East. The Twins have a pretty healthy lead, I believe, in the Central Division of the American League, and I believe the Astros are pretty well in command of the Western Division. The only other race that I would consider to be fairly tight would be the National League East, which really isn't even that close, is it? I mean, I think the Braves are.
It's no closer than the other ones you just named.
Yeah,
they're up 6 in Washington.
Okay, so you've got pretty much right now. You've got the Yankees, the Twins, and the Astros in command in the American League, and you've got the Braves and the Dodgers in command in the National League, whereas the Central Division, I don't know who's in first right now.
Cubs are half game off in Milwaukee.
Okay, so that's wide open.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean it's interesting. People are wondering, I guess, is this the year the Dodgers are going to actually get over the hump and
win the World
Series? Because it seems like they've. I mean, they obviously are always hot. They were in the last 2 World Series, but
right.
They have nothing to show for it. So I don't know if anything's different about them this year. We'll see, I guess. Atlanta is the team that stands out. They got a lot of good young players too. I mean,
yes, they do.
They're a team when you talk about blowing it up or rebuilding. They did it. They did a good job of it. And they drafted well. They got a lot of even the minor league system now. They have a lot of good prospects. So this is not, I think, a temporary thing with them. I think it's for years to come. You're going to see Atlanta up there.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that fascinates me about Atlanta is they really didn't make any significant moves in the offseason, all right, to speak of. And the Phillies went out and signed Harper, which was a big move for them. The Nationals signed Corbin, the pitcher, right? They lost Harper, but they signed Corbin. The Mets made a lot of moves in the offseason, all right?
Yeah, they got Cano.
They got Edwin Diaz from Seattle for their closer. They made some other moves. And here are the Braves, 6.5 games in first place, which is really pretty fascinating.
Yeah, the one move, they signed Donaldson to the 1-year deal.
They did. And they signed Keuchel here a few weeks ago, which, he's still – he really didn't contribute to this league. Right. So that's the Braves. Not only do they have, as you mentioned, a good young prospects and good players, they also seem to be run pretty well as far as the decisions they're making. They didn't jump out and grab some guy that because of a big name. And I think in the American League, the Dodgers. I mean, the Dodgers are going to be right there. I mean, there's no question they're going to be there. Just a question: do they have enough hitting, and is their pitching going to hold up? When they get in that short World Series. Yeah.
Well, the National League right now, you've got Washington and Philadelphia holding on to the wild cards. That'd be a nice one-game playoff.
Wouldn't it, though?
Harper versus the Nationals, one-game playoff. That'd be interesting. But yeah, I think that your NL is pretty much set except for that Central Division, and then you could argue the AL is pretty much set across the board. I mean, I think 5.5 games is the lowest lead, which could change, but still. One thing we can say for sure is the Orioles are out of it.
Yes, I think the Orioles are definitely out of it, and that's that's a shame too. I mean, I think that the Orioles need to reevaluate where they're going. They're going to have to they're going to have to make the same move the Braves did and the Astros did. They're going to have to blow this thing completely up and kind of restart it. Re-kick it into high gear. Because they just don't have it. And the Yankees, I think we talked a little bit about. The Yankees are the one team that, I think they have the best top to bottom lineup in baseball as far as their, who you're facing from one batter to the next. They've won some games purely on their offense, but their pitching concerns me. I think they're going to have to make some moves pitching wise to shore up that starting rotation and even the bullpen maybe because. Their pitching has let them down in a few games, even though their record is pretty good right now. In a short series, you got to have strong pitching, and I don't know that they have enough at the moment. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean they're a team that in the past has made moves at the deadline. We'll see if they do that this year. Maybe like a Bumgarner or somebody like that that's being kind of floated out there at the trade deadline. And July 31st is the trade deadline this year. There's no non-waiver trading after July 31st.
Right,
so there'll be a little more urgency there for teams.
Right. That'll be interesting come July 31st. Yeah. There'll be a lot of movement. Who's going to sell? Who's going to buy? Which teams think they're still in it? Which teams do not? But it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. I think. It's pretty much the same teams, right? I mean, from last year. I mean, when you think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see any. There's really not any new teams right now that.
You got Tampa Bay, I think, in a wild card spot right now.
And they were pretty good last year. They didn't make the wild card, but they had a pretty good. They won over 90 games last year. They just happened to be in a division where Boston won 108 and the Yankees won 100.
Right.
And that's going to be their same problem this year. They don't have to worry about Boston at the moment, but they've got the Yankees in front of them. But they could probably make the wild card, which would be interesting. Which is really pretty fascinating when you think about Tampa Bay, how good they've been here the last few years in a market that really is not a big market and doesn't get the fan support that a lot of these other teams get.
Yeah, I mean, you had that story about them in the future splitting time with Montreal.
Yeah.
Like, something weird where...
That's kind of weird.
It's ridiculous, yeah. I wouldn't mind seeing Montreal get a team and just move a team there. Don't split it or...
Yeah, I don't even see how that would work.
Yeah, I'm all for bringing back the Expos, though.
You are or you don't?
I'm all for it, yeah. All right, so before we get off here, let's touch on golf a little bit. Next week is the British Open week.
Correct.
Okay? So, obviously we're going to talk Tiger here. will be playing in the British Open, having not played in a month since the U.S. Open, basically. I said, we were talking earlier, I said I have a kind of a bad feeling. I don't think he's going to be in contention. Just, I'm honestly giving my thoughts on the tournament, but obviously I hope he is in contention, and he has the potential to be, obviously, with the way that tournament plays. But what do you think of kind of the way he set up his schedule this year and going forward, how you think he might be setting it up?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think here's my feeling on it, and is that, last year was his first year back officially from all his serious injuries. 2 years ago in 2017, when he went to the Masters Champions Dinner, he didn't play in the Masters.
Right.
He couldn't hardly walk. He had to have a nerve block just to be able to go to the Champions Dinner. So last year he had the fusion, and he had a tremendous year in 2018. Right, he competed in the PGA, finished second, almost won the British. Remember, we were watching that, and he won the Tour Championship. But he played a lot of golf at the end. He played in the PGA, then he played in all those playoff tournaments, won the Tour Championship, and then played in the Ryder Cup. Yeah. So he said, even before this year, hey, I played too much golf. My new body can't take all that golf. Yeah. My schedule is going to be a lot different next year. So he came out this year, and he played in the Hero World Challenge. He played in a couple tournaments early on. Didn't play in the Arnold Palmer Classic, all right, because of a neck problem, and then won the Masters, all right, which was a tremendous victory. But I think he geared up for the Masters. But I think now, given the fact that he knew he wasn't going to play a lot of golf this year, I think he's looking at it this way, is that he's won the Masters. He's got 15 majors now. He's done something that probably nobody outside of himself really would admit that they were honest and say that they thought he could do, okay? So, in fact, he even said when he missed the cut at the PGA in May, when they asked him about it, he said, he goes, I'm 43 years old, and I'm the Masters champion. He goes, I think that's pretty good. Yeah. So I think his thinking now is, hey, I've won the Masters. If I can win one major a year, for the next 7 years, even one every other year, he's going to break Nicklaus's record. So I think his goal is, hey, I'm going to play what I think I can play. If it means not playing between majors, so be it. And if it means, but I'm going to gear up for one major a year. And I think that one major he's going to gear up for is going to be the Masters. Yeah. Okay, now, if he doesn't win the Masters, I think maybe he'll gear up for another one. But I don't think you're going to see Tiger play like he used to, one or two tournaments in between majors anymore. Yeah. I just don't think his body can handle it. Yeah,
and the major schedule is compressed now with the PGA being moved to.
That's correct.
May too. So
that's a good point. Now you've got the PGA in May. That's right, and you've got the Players in March. Yeah. So it's a different schedule, and he just can't. His body can't take it anymore. I mean, it's just. Then you got cold weather. When you've got some cold weather or you got some rain, that affects him. I think the British Open is going to be a crapshoot. I think, can he win it? Sure, he can win it. I mean, there's no question he can win it, but it's going to be difficult given that he's never played that course before, and the fact that he's got to be a little rusty.
Yeah. I mean, I think he is too. You could tell he had some rust in the. PGA just coming off the Masters victory, because did he play between the Masters and the PGA?
He did not play between the Masters and the PGA. He played between the PGA and the U.S. Open, right?
And played better in the U.S. Open than he did in the PGA.
Yes, he did.
So
yes, he did.
Just based on his history this year, I don't like him coming into the British Open without playing. But we'll see.
Right. Well, the advantage of the British Open, again, I don't know this course at all, but most of the time with these links courses, depending upon the weather, he can get away with not hitting driver a lot of times, which helps him tremendously, And he's the best iron player on the tour. So, if he's got his irons dialed in like he did at Augusta, he's hard to beat. Right. But it's going to be hard because he's just not going to be focused enough, and he's not going to have enough practice in to get it done, I mean, but I think, I think he's good. It's been good for golf to see him back. It really has. Yeah. And the fact that he's won the Masters, I think right now he's looking at it this way. I mean, let's face it, he's accomplished most everything that he wanted to accomplish. Yeah. The only thing left for him to do are 2 more wins to break Sam Snead's record and 3 or 4 more majors, which is very doable at 43 years old. And you keep hearing these statistics, well, only 1 or 2 men have won their majors in their 40s, and that's hogwash. I mean, we're talking about Tiger Woods, So he can get it done.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. All right, so I know it's been kind of an extended absence for us in the Pressbox podcast, but we're actually gonna be recording another episode here pretty soon. So we'll have two new episodes coming down the pipe here for you. We've got NFL training camps opening up, and I think a few teams next week. We've got a football game August 1st.
Right.
So we'll touch on that here in the next one, I'm sure, a little bit. We got the baseball stretch run as well. And as far as I'm concerned, golf season ends the next Saturday. We'll try to do a recap of that tournament as well. But thanks for joining us on this episode. As always, follow us on Twitter at Pressbox Pod there as well. Tweet at us. Let us know if there's any topics you'd like to talk about. We'll try to get a few poll questions on there and things like that for some interaction as well. So look for that, and be sure to subscribe on iTunes as well. Search Pressbox Podcast, subscribe, and get the episodes right into your podcast inbox. And we will see you next time on the Pressbox Podcast.